What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis, live again. This for maybe the shocker of the entire week. If you are just joining us, yes, you are reading this right. Man, Kenny Pickett is a Philadelphia Eagle. Yes, the Kenny Pickett, the first-round quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they said all offseason long was going to be their guy. He's now QB2, and what is a very big trade that involves draft picks. We're going to break it all down here, Josh. Initial thoughts, Kenny Pickett's an Eagle.
I don't know what to say, quite honestly. I mean, this is unbelievable.
What the heck?
The fact that, like how he's making these moves, but it's the beauty of why he's the GOAT, right? It's Howie vision, always thinking ahead. You break down the actual trade specifics in the pick spot, but it's a phenomenal move. I mean, because of the value that you can get, a QB2 of a backup. And I know I've said, and I think both of us were on the same page, Justin Fields totally out on. Do not want that. But as far as a Kenny Pickett there, I love the potential. You have him as a backup option. He knows he's not coming here to start. Jalen Hurts has all the money, and you believe in Jalen Hurts. But it's much better because you're not have the drama that we have with Justin Fields situations. So to me, I'm like, all right, you know what? You want to add these? It didn't cost you that much too, because if you look at the picks that you're giving up, and you have a solid backup option there. Plus, you have still Tanner McKee, which again, not bad for a QB3. It's wild though. I mean, now I'm in the middle of eating lunch and hanging out and everything else. Thought we're done because the Josh Sweat news, but nope, it never ends. Howie Roseman always working.
Let's break down exactly what this trade looks like, because it's not just Kenny Pickett. So the Eagles acquire former first-round quarterback Kenny Pickett, along with a 2024 fourth and two 2025 seventh-round draft picks. The Steelers are getting the Eagles' third-round draft pick in 2024. This is interesting, Josh. Now, I know you get a fourth back. That third is some pretty serious compensation. Philadelphia very clearly in need of a backup quarterback, and they decided to not go for a draft pick, decided to not go to free agency. Ryan Tannehill, we talked about him yesterday. They spent a third-round draft pick. Sure, you get a fourth, but still on a guy who is not washed up by any means. Now, is Kenny Pickett a good quarterback? I mean, based on what you saw last season, no. And clearly that's why the Steelers signed Russell Wilson, and they're trying to move off of him. But still, this is not like you signed just any old backup to be behind Jalen Hurts. You're signing a first-round draft pick from just a couple of years ago who was a starting quarterback very, very quickly in this league, and who I think a lot of people would consider still a starter in this league without Matt Canada being his offensive coordinator. This is going to create, let's just be honest, some drama. Not that Jalen Hurts is going to lose his starting job or even should be considered with that. The Philadelphia media is going to run with this, and I'm very interested to see exactly how this is going to be handled.
You're right. Yeah, it's definitely going to create drama. And for the Jalen Hurts haters or the doubters or, changes leadership style or just anything like that, you're going to get lots of those comments and conversations. But again, I'll say, you traded away a third, but you still have a first. You'd have 2 seconds. And with the moves that Howie's made, you don't have near as many holes. You still have some, but let's remember, this is not out of the ordinary. I mean, it's crazy and wild, and I'm still kind of in shock, but this is not out of the ordinary for what Howie Roseman does. He values the QB position. It's quarterback factory, or the comment of that a number of times for reasons. And like we talked about too, I wasn't as much in favor of Jalen Hurts when he got drafted, because it's we have Carson Wentz. It was a good move. It was a good reason to do that. And we would not have a Super Bowl without a QB2. There is a plain and simple for sure bet. If you did not have Nick Foles, we don't have a Super Bowl. So it's for sure in Howie Roseman's mind. It should be in all of our minds too. Do you expect or believe in a potential? There's potential of Tanner McKee, potential of Kenny Pickett. Howie Roseman believes that it is. And you know what? As much as you might want to doubt it, so far, the track record wise, I'd say I'm going to lean with him. If he believes there's potential, I would assume that they had Kenny Pickett graded very highly in the draft when he was first coming out, because now you're saying, hey, he's available. We can get him for a lot less capital than if we might have considered him back when. So yeah, you can make a move here, get him as an option. To your point, he's not challenging Jalen Hurts. There's nothing going on there.
Right.
But to me, I'm great. You go ahead and do this trade, see what he's worth. Heck, you could still possibly even trade him late. If there's another team that goes, hey, we actually might be interested in Kenny Pickett, you could get draft compensation back. Maybe not a third, but still, it's not like you're going to get nothing for him. So I think this is a good move. They were looking for a QB2 also. It tells me they tried to get Joe Flacco, because the report out there was that they did try to sign him and he went with Indy. That didn't work out. How he scans the market, goes, I don't really care too much for the other options there. The Steelers have an availability now with Russell Wilson, and Kenny Pickett wants out. You go and make the move. I think it's a decent move. I'm all right with it.
I'm very interested to see how people are going to react to this, because I have a feeling that it's going to create a lot more drama than, for me, worth a third-round draft pick. It's very interesting in terms of what's happening with the backup quarterback spot now. You mentioned Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is a very different player, Josh, than what Philadelphia is getting in Kenny Pickett. One is at the tail end of his career, is very clearly a backup quarterback, and is somebody who you need in a worst-case scenario situation. And sure, Kenny Pickett is not going to compete with Jalen Hurts for the quarterback spot. It's going to be ridiculous. But what's crazy is the fact that you are getting somebody who is at the beginning of his career and immediately bringing him to a team that also has a very young quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And while I agree with the idea that, well, if someone gets injured, then obviously you can go ahead and trade him to a different football team and maybe get some capital for him. Still, though, this seems to me like Howie Roseman wants to make sure he has a legit backup quarterback that can grow with the Philadelphia Eagles, in the same way Nick Foles was able to do when he came back the second time with Philadelphia. I'm just very curious to see how fans are going to react to this, and especially what the media does, because, listen, Josh, you and I both know this. We cover the Philadelphia Eagles. What does the media do in Philadelphia, whether it's the Inquirer or WIP or all the different talking heads that are all throughout the Philadelphia sports media? If Jalen Hurts has a slow start, if Jalen Hurts throws a couple of picks, are we not going to have callers call into WIP or, articles being written saying, well, what about Kenny Pickett? That's the problem with something like this, is it creates an opportunity for idiots to get some airtime with takes like that.
Yeah, you're right. It is going to happen without a doubt. There's going to be one game where Jalen ends up playing a little bit poorly, and all of a sudden, move on from him. Kenny Pickett should be the guy. Heck, you'll probably have people do that, honestly, like the very beginning of the season, or even in preseason. Be like, no, Kenny Pickett should be playing. He should be out there. But no, I like the potential of it. Again, sure, you give up a third-round pick, but I see comments. I don't know if people are just not looking at the video there or what, but they're asking like what the pick compensation is. It's right there. Like the Eagles
it's
sending
on the screen.
2024 third.
Yep.
Steelers are going to send back a 2024 fourth, 2025 2 sevenths, and you get Kenny Pickett. I mean, you're literally it's one round. I mean, I know you would rather have it now rather than later. That's always the theory and logic, and I totally get that. But it's one round difference.
Sure.
And you also get a potential of a QB2 that Howie Roseman really liked. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made this move. So I'm totally for it. It's fine with me. It's not like you're still out of the question of we can't go draft cornerback. We can't still draft linebacker. We can't fill the needs. There's tons of draft picks that you have. And let's not forget, you have 3 5th-round picks this year and a 6th, because the extra comp picks and comp situations. You could still very easily trade up into the 3rd round and essentially kind of get that back if you really like a guy. So to me, this is not, oh, we just missed out on a great player. If there's someone available in the 3rd round, Howie will trade up, and he has the capital to go do that. It's an easy move to be made. I think this is a win. You take advantage of the luxury that Pittsburgh had a guy, or have their guy supposedly now in Russell Wilson. Kenny Pickett's not an option. They're ready to just, let's go ahead and move on, see what we can get for him. And you get him for pennies on the dollar. Like, this is not the trade value that he would have been. I mean, obviously where he was drafted, but this is not the trade value that he would have been before Russell Wilson. Even you trade him before, because they value him a lot higher. So I think you take advantage.
It is better than Justin Fields. I will say that. The mold of Kenny Pickett is very interesting. Is he in the mold of Jalen Hurts? He's definitely mobile. Is he as mobile as Justin Fields? I would say no, but he is on a rookie contract. He's going to be towards the tail end of that rookie contract, and being that he was a late first-round draft pick and not a top 5 pick, he's going to be very, very cheap for people asking down below in the comment section. Remember, you paid Mariota $5 to $8 million. He signs with the Commanders for 10 just the other day. It's less than $10 million. The Steelers are going to be on the hook for the majority of it, as they paid it the first couple of years. Kenny Pickett obviously was in Pittsburgh, but being a Pennsylvania kid, Philadelphia got a good look at him, obviously, during their draft time. Clearly they were interested, had no need at the moment, but they believe Kenny Pickett is worth what is a 3rd-round draft pick to get a 4th and 2 7ths back, as you see up on your screen right here. And while it is still very interesting to me, and I'm shocked by this. I had to make sure. I think Ari Mirov was one of the first tweet I saw of this. I had to make sure it wasn't fake, because it just it's a little bit head-scratching. You can see Howie Roseman's thought process that if Jalen Hurts gets injured, which we saw this past season, he never came out of the game, or he never missed an extended period of time, but he was definitely banged up. If Jalen Hurts were to go down and miss an extended period of time, would you rather have Tanner McKee or Joe Flacco or Marcus Mariota? Or I guess in Howie Roseman's mind, he wants to have Kenny Pickett, a young guy surrounded by a ton of Eagle weapons that they can lean on to win a couple football games, because I guess 2017 will forever live scarred in every Eagle fan and front office member's hearts, is you have to have a legit backup because the team is so stacked. And if this was not further indication Philadelphia has gone completely all in for a Super Bowl this year, I don't know what is, Josh. This is more of a we are going all in move than Devin White was yesterday. It's more than Saquon Barkley was, because you don't make this move at all if you are like, well, maybe we'll win 9-10 games, first round of the playoffs as a 4 seed. No, this is like, we are going to make sure we go to the Super Bowl through hell or high water, whether Jalen is healthy or not. That's literally what this is.
They're definitely trying to make a ton of moves. I'm curious also, like, because we've known that Kellen Moore is possibly, in a way, requesting some guys. You don't know how much he's emphasizing or pounding the table for certain individuals. But I'm also curious, like, maybe Kellen Moore really liked Kenny Pickett too. And if he did, I mean, he had to have liked him enough to make a trade here. You don't go get a backup quarterback. But we, mentioned Easton Stick as a possibility. We were doing the live show yesterday. Say, hey, who would you want? Who do you think they'll go after? You throw out different veteran options, Josh Dobbs, Tyler Huntley. You just name your player at this point. And it's like, okay, there's other guys out there, but obviously if you're willing to give up some compensation of that sort, to me, it tells a story of not only does Howie Roseman value that, but Kellen Moore says, no, I like Kenny. Because, I mean, go look at the breakdown of Kellen Moore and a lot of different quarterbacks, but there's one specifically of him, and I'm not saying that he's at the Justin Herbert level, but I'm just saying when Kellen Moore breaks down quarterbacks, he has a specific look that that he wants in that individual. And so I think it tells a bigger story of, fine, Kenny Pickett has not reached that potential. I totally get it. I know it's 50-50, half and half. Some like it, some don't like it. Why Kenny Pickett? But Kellen Moore obviously sees something in his potential and says, I can get him up to that level. And I'm telling you, as much as we may want to discredit it, Kellen Moore's offenses for 4 seasons were top 2 in the league. So he can maximize a quarterback's growth as much as even, we don't like to give credit to Dallas, but you want to say Dak Prescott's growth really happened as Kellen Moore being that coordinator. And so I'm just saying that if you get Kenny Pickett here, a good backup option, he's not going to push Jalen Hurts for the starting job. We're not saying that at all, but it's still, to your point, you want to get an insurance policy and someone that you believe in. Kellen Moore thinks that's the way it is. Howie Roseman thinks that's the way it is. So I don't think that there's a reason to be discrediting it or disbelieving, knocking, anything like that. They have more than enough proof to say, they know what they're doing. They know what they see in talent. I'm going to trust them on that side.
Let's just quickly read this quote tweet from Ari Mirov here. This is interesting, Josh. So this was about 5 minutes ago. The Steelers' decision to trade Kenny Pickett was in part because of the way Pickett was handling the arrival of Russell Wilson, per Gary Dulac. He insisted he was fine with competing, but that changed once they signed Wilson. Now, that's interesting. So if you're Kenny Pickett, so if this is to be believed, Kenny Pickett wanted to be the starter, obviously. Russell Wilson comes in and he starts throwing a little bit of a fit. I mean, not necessarily. He's not a toddler, but he's having a little bit of an attitude. He doesn't want to compete with Russell Wilson. So they ship him to Philadelphia. Now, does Kenny Pickett have a say in where he goes? No. But that shows you Kenny Pickett's mindset here. He's not waltzing into Philadelphia just happily like, okay, well, give me the clipboard, put the earpiece in. He's going to be trying to compete, and even though Jalen Hurts is fully surmounted as the starter in this offense, you're getting a backup quarterback who does not want to be a backup quarterback by any means.
Yeah, that's true. I also, especially of all times, but like this time of the NFL season or off season, whatever, I'm just always fascinated with, okay, who's the person leaking this report? Like, I believe it's true that Ari Mirov and others are probably being told this, but is it the Steelers to save face, to be like, wow, you just like got rid of good potential, and now we're believing in Russell Wilson after we've seen, Russell Wilson be a dumpster fire? So like, are they trying to save face and be like, no, we need to ship off Kenny because he wanted to be here? Who knows? I could believe it. Sure. If you're Kenny Pickett, I'd be a little frustrated, but at the same time, I could also believe it if you're the Steelers and, okay, our organization here is not exactly happy with us moving on, or for those that still believe there might be some potential or keep him as a QB2, who knows? I'm fine with competitiveness. Like, honestly, it's not like I want a QB2 to come in here and be like, oh, no, I'm not the guy. I'll never be the guy. I'm just hanging out, whatever. Like, we still saw the fire, passion, everything else from Nick Foles whenever he goes in there. Like, you need a dude. You need someone who's not just, lackadaisically on the bench. Now, we temper that too. Like, I hope that there's a level of Kenny Pickett willing to be a teammate and will actually show that, be that, and everything else. But I don't know. I still would, I guess, caution and say, let's not go full board of like, okay, Kenny Pickett's going to have an attitude here. There's no way in my mind, as great as Howie Roseman is, that he's taking a chance, taking a risk on, or plus, I can't imagine Jeffrey Lurie signs off on
I
this to
agree.
say,
I
hang
agree
on,
with that.
hang on. I just invested $255 million of my money, and you want to go get a guy that might create drama for the guy that I just paid a boatload of money to? There's no way. Surely he did his due diligence to be like, this is worth it. The guy has his head on straight. He's not going to create extra drama. I think it's going to be okay. There's just no way in my mind you take that much of a
I
chance
agree.
and risk it.
Let's just say this. We'll reset the deck here really, really quickly. Philadelphia, they're sending their 2024 third-round draft pick. They get a fourth back, and that obviously is only about 22 picks, I believe, in between those two. It's not a big, I mean, third and fourth, you see the number, but it's not as big. And, of course, they get 2 seventh-round draft picks in 2025 as well. That came out about 15 minutes ago. We've been live ever since. There is a thought process here that this could be a 4D chess move. Now, if you're Howie Roseman, you're looking at the NFL draft, and there are 5 to 6 quarterbacks selected possibly in the first round, but there are a lot of quarterback-needy teams, and teams like the New York Giants, who have reportedly today are interested in J.J. McCarthy, and teams like the Minnesota Vikings, who got an extra first-round draft pick from Houston today, who might want to trade up to go get a Drake May, for instance. If one of these teams, Denver needs a quarterback, if Washington needs a quarterback, the Patriots need a quarterback, the Bears need a quarterback, a lot of these teams will get their quarterbacks, but if you're one of these teams and you do not get your quarterback, you could flip right back around to Philadelphia, and Howie could spin Kenny Pickett back to you for a second-round draft pick, or something a little bit better, a third and a fifth, in order to go ahead and get some additional capital for 2025 and give the quarterback-needy team their quarterback. Now, that's probably unlikely because
That's a good point.
It's just it seems a little bit ambitious. I mean, I guess it could be the other 20% to a move. It's like 80% is he's our backup at $4 million a year. I think he's owed $8 the next 2 years, so very cheap. But part of that could be, well, if the Vikings come calling and they're desperate because Justin Jefferson needs $30 million a year and he also needs a quarterback and we couldn't get one, then Kenny Pickett is available. I doubt that is the main reason, but it's another option for Philadelphia with this move that is starting to be a little bit more clear here, if you will, for me, because it's the fourth-round draft pick. It's very close to being a third-round draft pick. It's not that much of a drop. Howie still has, 8 other draft picks on top of that, including 2 seconds to make moves. And Kenny Pickett is only due $4 million a year, and so the price of keeping him is extremely cheap for somebody who, let's be honest, Tanner McKee is a late-round draft pick. Tanner McKee is not ready to start Week 17, wild card round of the playoffs, divisional round of the playoffs. Kenny Pickett, he's not much better, but he still has starter-level experience and has won some big games. He beat Baltimore last year on the road.
True. Yeah, you're right. It's he has a potential. Again, it's can he prove it at certain times? Maybe, but it's also the question that we come back to is like competition-wise, that's okay if he wants to be here and be the best that he can. We want him to be that, even as a backup. I want all my backups pushing my starters. I don't want just lackadaisical backups. I want them to be there. Now, at the same time, I want them to be a good teammate, but I haven't heard near as much drama of Kenny Pickett, besides, I know you just mentioned that recent report, but who knows how much that is from the Steelers and everything else. Sure. But before that, there hasn't been near as much drama or question of work ethic or emotions and everything else that there was with Justin Fields. And so I would assume that if you were to make a move with Justin Fields, then all of a sudden, whoa, because, you don't get hardly any arguments, and understandably so, I'm right there with you, but you don't get hardly any arguments of saying, hey, who's better, Jalen Hurts or a Kenny Pickett? Now, as much as this may be ridiculous, there's several people that still say Justin Fields is better than Jalen Hurts or has a much higher ceiling than Jalen Hurts. So if you made that trade, then all of a sudden, not only even internally, but national media headlines, everything else is, oh, hey, Justin Fields is going to be the guy. Just wait, like Jalen Hurts is out. So makes sense from that side too. I like keeping your options open. To your point, it seems unlikely that you're going to give up a third round pick and hope that you could do something draft night. Maybe. But still, you did, to your point also, like you got something back. It's not just a third round pick. You got a fourth, you got 2 sevenths. Sevenths are not as valuable. I know that too, but still you're getting some compensation back, and it's a risk that Howie was worth taking. For people that are doubting it, I can understand. That's fine. We all can have opinions, but at the same time, this is Howie Roseman, and the moves that he's done, especially from the quarterback position, have panned out fairly well, especially whenever we don't like them a lot of times. So I'm just saying, I'm kind of reserving judgment here. I think this could be definitely a positive on that side. And you got a cheap quarterback too. You mentioned the $2 million. I think is the cap hit $2 million? Is like he's 4?
I think he's 4, but I think it's 4 total is okay, what you could end up paying him. In the end,
it's super cheap, like you said, really cheap. Get a QB2 for that. Cheap. That's great.
Appreciate the 2,100 people watching right now. We are one of the few people live to get you guys the latest things happening with the Philadelphia Eagles. Be sure to give a thumbs up and hit the sub button. We'd appreciate that. We told you guys when things happen, and this was one that I was pretty shocked about. We will be live to break it all down. Listen, Kenny Pickett is not a good quarterback right now, and he was drafted to be that in what was a very weak quarterback draft class just the other year, but he also had a very bad offensive coordinator in Matt Canada, and while we're not making any argument for him starting, but talking about him as just a potential quarterback, he was very successful at Pitt, and he obviously was a first-round quarterback that was graded very, very highly, at least compared to the other quarterbacks that were in that draft class, but he had a very non-pass happy, but also very bad at running the football, sort of kind of very vanilla offense. It's very similar to what the Eagles ran this past season. And so you put him behind Jalen Hurts, a guy who's no nonsense, who's been in situations like this. Think of the Tua Tagovailoa, handled it very, very well, who can mentor him. And then an offensive coordinator who has had a lot of success, as Josh mentioned, with quarterbacks, including Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, to get him right both mentally and physically, and weapons galore to be around it in practice. You don't think practicing with A.J. Brown makes you better? George Pickens is good. George Pickens is a kid. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, this offensive line, the defensive leaders that you now have all over this football team, it's going to make Kenny Pickett better. Now, how much better can Kenny Pickett be? I don't know. I hope we don't see Kenny Pickett play a down at all during the regular season and the postseason this year, because Jalen is our guy. But also at camp with your backups, you're trying to figure out if this fourth-string wide receiver is any good. You could have Marcus Mariota throwing to him, who had a horrific camp this past year, and I think Howie is course-correcting from just how bad Mariota was. You saw in that Giants game briefly when Jalen Hurts went out with a finger being bent sideways. It's not good. Now you have somebody who at least was a starter-caliber player and can sling it at worst in training camp and help out the backup guys that he's going to run with to potentially, make sure we find some maybe diamonds in the rough on offense.
Yep. I'm totally with you. It's good to have that competition. You upskill, you have younger, there's potential there, like we mentioned. And hopefully he doesn't play. Or I guess honestly, maybe hopefully he does play, but it's like the last two games of the season where we just totally locked it up. But I'm with you. We don't want him to have to play. But again, it's different whenever you have the skills around you or the talent around you, like you mentioned. So I think there's some positive from this. Again, I put the poll up here: 63%, 64% are in favor of this trade. So it's pretty polarizing. I get that. Anytime we're talking about a quarterback and a draft pick compensation and doing things like that, and with Kenny Pickett, the way that he has played or not played. But again, to your point, and this goes for a lot of the free agent signings, we didn't have a better option. I'd take him over Mariota, and the same thing for Devin White. Devin White over Zach Cunningham. So these things, it's these low risk, high reward type of settings. You're not signing or trading for Kenny Pickett to have him play, but you're having him here for depth and the potential that you see in it. So again, I think it's a good potential, a risk worth taking. You still have plenty of draft picks. You can move up in the draft like we talked about, but I don't see it as a negative. I'm not saying this is the best trade ever, or this is a absolutely phenomenal move. But at the same time, too, I don't think you could knock it, at least in my opinion. But
it's a weird one. I mean, it's if you would have told me that Kenny Pickett would be a Philadelphia Eagle, this time last week, I would have said, okay, go get off your loopy meds, because that's never going to happen, because Kenny Pickett had not lost the Steelers starting quarterback job. Even with Russell Wilson being added over there in Pittsburgh, the idea was an open competition at camp. The Pittsburgh Steelers owe Russell Wilson like $1 million this year. They owe him nothing. And so if he didn't win the job, then obviously, whatever. He's a backup. It's the best that he can do. But clearly they feel very strongly about Russell Wilson. They're probably going to try to trade up in the draft to get somebody, hope somebody falls, like a Michael Penix, due to potential injury concerns coming out of college at Washington. Who knows? They're in the teens right now. Obviously, it's where Pittsburgh Steelers teams kind of always are. But still, this shows you that Kenny Pickett was probably not going to win that starting job, and now he has to go kind of restart his career, which, if we're talking just strictly Kenny Pickett's career, there are worse things that can happen, because you have seen when quarterbacks get to bad situations like Pickett on what has been a historically bad quarterback place, minus Ben Roethlisberger, at least post-Ben Roethlisberger, with a bad offensive coordinator, it stunts your growth. And they didn't really emphasize, putting a good offensive line or maybe giving him, a solid passing attack, whatever it is. I know Pickens is young and they have a couple of other options there, but still, now he goes to Philadelphia, and what is a quarterback, a strong quarterback overall system, a strong quarterback overall organization. They emphasize their quarterback play, and if he can get right a couple of years from now, you could have a revitalization of his career, much like you saw when Jimmy Garoppolo went over to the San Francisco 49ers under Kyle Shanahan and led him to a Super Bowl. I mean, that's probably the best scenario for Kenny Pickett.
Completely.
And he also doesn't have to move states, so that's also probably a little bit of a plus as well.
Totally, yeah. And like Brian said, Pickett's on a rookie deal, like we mentioned, so that's a good thing with the money-wise. To your point, yes, again, I get it where people are saying, like, he's not good, he hasn't played well. You can look at his stats, you can watch the tape. We all realize that, but it's still the potential of the guys that do this professionally for a living. You don't make a trade on a whim. So This is not Howie Roseman, oh, hey, Kenny Pickett's available? All right, let's see what they want. Like, no. They've watched tape on him. Kellen Moore's watched a ton of tape on him because you don't get the sign off on your OC unless you say, hey, we're going to go trade and get this guy. I'm going to give up draft capital if you like him. If not, we're moving on. There's other options. We can go a ton of different options at QB2, but they liked it enough to say, let's bring him in here. And also, like you were bringing up, I mean, the talent is all over the field that Kenny Pickett did not have available. So if he has to get out there, again, Jalen is your guy, but if he has to get out there, it's a good backup option. And heck, again, we've seen a number of quarterbacks, like you mentioned, that have resurrected their careers or found something all of a sudden when people were so ready to say that they're a bust. I mean, you mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo, you think about Geno Smith, you think about a number of guys that all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, they actually did become a decent quarterback. Again, we're not saying he's the next starter of the Philadelphia Eagles, but I just think that let's hold on and reserve judgment before it's like, oh my gosh, we made the worst trade in the world here. I think this is a good trade. I really do. Yeah. You got a fourth back, you got 2 7ths. Howie can make some more trades, and you got him for super, super cheap.
And as we mentioned, and I see people asking questions about Simmons or go younger at cornerback in the draft, Philadelphia getting all the rest of their holes. C.J. Gardner-Johnson just finished his press conference, and now he's going to wear number 8, so who knows what number Kenny Pickett's going to wear. But when you talk about, what Philadelphia is going to do in the draft, they can do whatever they want. I mean, literally, they can do whatever they want. They have 9 draft picks now. They don't need a backup quarterback. They don't need a linebacker, at least in the first round. Adrian Cooper, sure, maybe. They don't need a safety. They got C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Like, they can do whatever they want in the draft, and that is probably what Howie was hoping for, because it's going to be a very interesting first half of draft night on night 1, because you're going to have quarterbacks and receivers go crazy, and you're going to have a top 10 player sitting there at 17, and Philly's at 22. You bump up there and get a top 10 player in the end. Think what happened last season when you got Jalen Carter, a top 5 player at number 9. You can get value in this year's draft, and Howie wants the ability to get the best player available, whether it's receiver or corner or pass rusher or linebacker or safety or O-line, instead of having to get a linebacker or having to get a safety because you just don't have one on the roster. So McCall Allen says, do you think AJ will stay once he's eligible for free agency? I don't know. That's too far in the future. I think if he gets a Super Bowl ring for sure, but let's just get him one. That way he's for sure staying. How about that?
Yeah. Appreciate the super chat and the first one of the stream, but I would agree. I mean, it's so far ahead. If you want to just totally speculate, Jalen Hurts and him, really good friends. Jalen Hurts, the godfather of the child too. I mean, if they're playing well, I mean, he would probably prefer to stay. You see what compensation-wise looks like and everything, but that's so far down the line. Who knows? We'd love for him too, though.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, we're just making sure that nothing else crazy is happening here. I'm not seeing anything, so I want to be able to wrap up the way people who are getting this a little bit later can go ahead and see it. Although I think there is one final tweet that we do need to throw up on the screen here, Josh, that I think all of our Eagle fans will enjoy. Kenny Pickett, you talk about being a childhood fan of an NFL team. How about Kenny Pickett in, I believe that's a Carson Wentz jersey from a couple of years ago. And I think there's one of him as a kid in a Terrell Owens jersey. So if you're wondering his loyalty, I think he's a fan of the Philadelphia team in Pennsylvania, not the Pittsburgh team in Pennsylvania, based off of this, what do you think, high school picture here? I mean, Kenny's a young guy. He's younger than you and I, and we're young guys. So he's just a baby.
That's a pretty young picture there too. Yeah, but it's great. You know, I mean, you talk about childhood fandom and being a part of that team. You never would expect it. So there's some extra motivation. There's lots of reasons for motivation for players. You know, we get it obviously for like a Devin White on a 1-year prove it deal type of contract, and players to move back closer to the city. Hopefully Hassan Reddick ends up somehow, some way, extending a contract there, which will be live if that does happen. Mm-hmm. But being close to the city, being from there, team favorite, things like that, it's a benefit. But no, I I don't know. I mean, gosh, if I had to guess, I assume that's in high school-ish age day. Yeah, maybe.
I think so. I think so.
I can't pick out ages anymore, honestly. I don't know if that's a sign of like starting to get too old or anything, but I was like, good gosh.
Scrump says, is Jerome Baker still on the table? I don't think he would be. Not that the Kenny Pickett contract gives you less money because he's costing virtually nothing, but I do think that that's probably not going to happen. But I would have told you that Kenny Pickett's not going to happen or Josh Sweat's not going to happen, and we've done lives on both of those today. So stay tuned, sub button, notification bell. I don't know how many times we have to say this before you guys are convinced, but we're the first ones live every single time. The thumbnails come out faster, the descriptions are written quicker, and we're ready to rock as soon as this stuff happens, myself and Josh Davis. So we're going to wrap things up here, and obviously go ahead and hit the sub button for the latest news as more things are going to pop out on a daily basis.
There you go. Heck yeah.
For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. We sign off. Kenny Pickett is the Eagles' backup quarterback. Have a good rest of your Friday.
Go Birds.